welcome to the CDG BizCast. I'm your host, Christian Gonzalez, co-owner of Creativity Design Group, a digital marketing firm in Houston, Texas. Today, we will be discussing the importance of offering your customers extreme hospitality. What does that mean? In simplest terms, it means bringing your A game when it comes to customer service. Every single customer that you serve in your business is vital to its overall standing. Retaining customers and converting new customers to existing customers is dependent on how well they are treated, how much they love your products and services, and of course, how consistent customer service and quality is. Chef and restaurateur Michael Brown of Jamburritos joins us once again to discuss extreme hospitality in detail. Welcome back, Michael. It is always a pleasure to have you on BizCast to share your wisdom to all of our fellow business owners.
Hi, Christian. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about this near and dear concept in my life. It's been my 40-year plus year practice of hospitality, working in 3 major hotels, owning 3 restaurants, 2 food trucks, and 2 catering companies. And so I just love talking about hospitality. Thanks for having me.
It's always our pleasure to have you on our show. And we also here at CDG are strong believers in serving the customers with the best possible customer service that we can provide. Hospitality is a vital part of any industry, whether you own a restaurant or any type of business in general. It is always important that you treat your customers like royalty. And my first question for you today is about an old saying that we've heard numerous times. The customer is always right. It's a saying that many agree or disagree with. In terms of providing extreme hospitality, how do you feel about this timeless phrase that we've heard over and over again?
You know, like you said, there are differences of opinion on that. You'll have some restaurateurs will say, no, the customer is not always right. But I tend to advise them not to say that, because being the head of their company, and typically, you know, whatever they feel internally is going to trickle down to the staff, and then that can cause problems. So I try to explain it like this. This is a concept, and it's not to be taken literally. It's a guiding light for extreme hospitality. It is never beneath you to take the high road in every situation. And in that vein, management, ownership should always consider taking the high road. And it is about how we react to the wrong that customers do. You will have customers that will come in with bad attitudes. They may come in because they had a rough day. But in our industry, we're there to help turn that situation around if we can. You can't always 100% of the time turn that situation around, but you can always present a pleasant, professional attitude towards these negative situations. And this is what sets us apart from the rest. You will have some owners that they'll argue with their customers. I've seen it happen, but what they don't understand is eventually they're hurting their bottom line. So I would also like to add that emotional intelligence is something that really helps us in this hospitality business in our restaurants. And emotional intelligence just speaks to how you process customers and the guests as they're coming in and the situations that you see them in. So for example, I've seen situations where a customer will walk in the door and you can tell that they're in a rush. Emotional intelligence will tell you that this is not a time to chit chat, but this is a time to get really straight to the point, find out what they need and get them in and out. Then you may have a lady that walks in with 2 or 3 kids hanging on her, and you can tell she's just totally exhausted, totally exacerbated from this challenge that she has taking care of these little kids, looking after them. And emotional intelligence will maybe allow you to spend more time speaking with her, finding out how you can help, or what the kids might need. And you know, you can always win over a parent when you pay good attention to their children. Another emotional intelligence situation could be, let's say you have that really irate person. I've had personal experiences with this. I'll give you one, for example. When I was a manager at the Greenhouse restaurant at the World Trade Center Hotel back in the mid-'80s. This hotel particularly was catered to a lot of international clients. And in Europe, tipping is a part of every bill. You know, the tip is already on the bill, as opposed to in America where we tip after we get the bill. So I had a responsibility towards my servers to help them to make sure that they earn enough money based on the service that they provided. And sometimes they would come to me. One time they came to me and said, hey, that man just walked out on this check without paying tipping. Well, for me, it was a matter of how do I take care of my server at the same time, not insulting the guests. I slowly walked out, not in an aggressive manner, and found that particular customer in the lobby and introduced myself and said, how was everything? How was your food? Oh, it was great. How was your service? Oh, it was fantastic. Okay, so I'm just asking because sometimes it's indicative of poor service when no tip is left. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that. And so he went back and took care of that. So, and these challenges are few and far between. For the most part, if you have a good environment in your restaurant, you're going to have people that they don't want to come in and cause trouble, especially when it comes to food. Because people think, oh my gosh, if I act this way, they're going to put something in my food, which in my 40 plus years of experience in the hospitality industry never happened. Even though the movies might show people doing that in the movies, it's a poor representation of our industry. And I hopefully want to have a platform one day where I can talk to Hollywood about that. Now, the other thing about, the customer's always right, as I mentioned before, it's not to be taken literally, but it's to be a guiding light for how we conduct ourselves in these negative situations. But some of the things that we can do is we can set the stage for customer-centric environments. Okay, as I talked about earlier, where you have, a nice place for people to come to, they typically will respect it and respect the people in there. But what happens is when you have that customer's always right philosophy, you set the stage for a customer-centric environment. Let's say one of the situations that I've found happen out here in Pearland, the owner produced a product that was an all-you-can-eat pizza environment. And people wanted to take home stuff, food, and they would constantly be arguing with them that you can't do that. So then they switched to an a la carte situation, and then still they're arguing again. Why am I saying this? Because when you set the right stage for a customer-centric environment, it has to do with what you're offering and how you're offering your service, and it's well thought out. So you have pre-thought in meeting the customer needs and anticipating some objections to what you might think about doing. And then I always call service as an art. Service is not just a laborious job that we do, but it's actually an art to it. So I say only the willing need apply. And then there's self-control. Self-control is how we, conduct ourselves in a people-centric environment. One of the things I always tell my staff as well is that the guest is always watching and they make decisions on your professionalism. So I like to say it like this. You can get the pity vote. So if a customer comes in and treats you poorly, you handle it well. The persons that are behind them that are looking at them like, oh my God, this guy is not a nice person. And what they'll do is they'll have pity on you and they will patronize you even all the more. I'd also want to talk about how do you prepare your staff for that irate customer? Now, remember, I said that it doesn't happen. It's few and far between. But when it does happen, it is not pretty. And so I wrote down a couple of points here. If I'm going to prepare my staff for a negative situation, I would suggest that they work on being a whole person within themselves. I would also suggest that they be prepared for service. Sometimes if you don't come in ready to work and you're not setting up properly, you can run into problems where now you make that environment a hostile environment for that customer, that guest. And then that's what produces the irate customer or the unsatisfied customer. So the mise en place, the setup, and all those things that we set up every day we're preparing to serve, that helps us run a smooth operation. Then also always smile. And if you're having trouble, get help. Come look to your manager or look to your fellow coworker to help assist you in this negative situation. And don't panic. Be careful and watch your facial expressions and your reactions. Body language tells more than your words to people. So if you're twisting your neck because you're offended by what somebody says or does, they're going to know that, and that's going to fuel the fire. Be clear when responding and providing accurate information. Sometimes when we have an irate customer, we kind of lose our sense of what we know and what we've been taught and what we've been trained to do. But you're not a robot. You're not responding in a robotic way. but you're showing empathy towards the situation and you're doing your best to give them accurate information, because there's nothing worse than giving bad information to an irate customer, because then they can become more irate. And then also be apologetic when necessary. Sometimes you may have to apologize for situations that were out of your control, but still showing sympathy and empathy towards that person can go a long way. And what we do know is that people are 10 times more likely to write a negative review than a positive review. So I would say those things are good pointers. It stems from the customers are always right. Every restaurant that I ever own in the future will always live by that credo, but they'll understand what it means to have that credo, that it's a guiding light for Xtreme Hospitality.
Yes, very well said. It really does depend on the situation, and irate customers, or even just dissatisfied customers in general, are the ones that we always feel the need that we need to tend to more sometimes, but every customer in general deserves the equal amount of respect and hospitality and quality service. However, whenever there is a problem, we just need to make sure that they get tended to so that we can prevent them from having a one-star experience, because any one-star experience can be converted to a five-star experience just like that. What you said about customers being more likely to leave a negative review than a positive review, and I can attest to that because I myself like to leave reviews, and if I have a bad experience somewhere, I'm never afraid to go on to Google Maps, find the business, leave a one-star review, and explain why I was dissatisfied. I'm never afraid to do that because I feel that they need to see their mistake. I also feel that I'm helping other potential customers save themselves. If the experience truly was bad, nobody else should have to go through that experience. Now, in terms of irate customers, in CDG's nearly 10-year existence, we've only had one irate customer ever, and it was because we hired a contractor to do some photography work for them. The contractor did not show up. They proved to themselves at first that they were good at what they did. They had a good portfolio, but when we sent them on a job, they didn't show up to the job site. And the next thing you know, I'm getting a call from this client telling me that he didn't show up. They were just really upset. They wanted their work done. And I tried to contact the photographer and he ghosted us. He just ran away from us. We even paid him up front too, because the client paid up front and we gave him his portion. So he ghosted us after we had already paid him. So it became chaotic because one day she showed up at our office uninvited without telling us she was coming, outside of business hours when we weren't even there, and went to a neighboring business that we were sharing a space with, and she just started basically raising hell with them. She got really upset with them and she treated them personally as if they were part of it. Now that was a completely different company in a completely different industry. They had nothing to do with CDG and had no affiliation whatsoever with us, and she just decided to take out her anger and frustration on them, which of course led me to immediately call her as soon as we were able to. Guess why she was there? She wanted her refund. We actually spoke about giving her a refund no more than a few days before. She emailed us originally saying that she wanted to get her money back, so I said, okay, please send me your Zelle phone number so I can refund you, because she paid us with Zelle originally. I never heard from her. Then, after days of not being able to reach her and never hearing from her, she shows up out of the blue like this and causes all this trouble that I was not expecting. She showed up unannounced, outside of business hours when we weren't even there, and it was just really unprofessional on her part to do that. We were ready to give her her refund. She just never responded to the email that I sent her. She decided instead of responding to the email, she would show up at our office unannounced, create problems with the neighboring business that had nothing to do with the problem at hand, and demand her refund that way. Apparently, she was extremely irate. All of that could have been avoided if she had just responded to my email. I would have sent her her refund right then and there if she had just responded, but she didn't. Instead, she decided she wanted to do this instead.
Can I put my advisor hat on? What did you learn from that?
What I learned personally was that what I should have done was I should have looked back on the phone number that she sent the money with and just refunded it to that number. However, businesses always have different numbers, and I didn't want to just send it back without confirming that I could send it to that number. I should have double checked with her ahead of time and make sure that there were other alternatives to a refund, just in case that one in particular did not work. That's one thing I learned. And also, I learned that whenever a customer is irate, always make sure that you have the solution immediately at hand. So I was not available at the time that she needed me. So I made sure to call her and let her know that I was ready to give her a refund. So I immediately set up something. I made sure that I had a solution available immediately. But even though I never got to tell her this, I just wanted her her to get her money and just basically leave our company alone because she was already proving to be a lot of trouble.
Yeah, all it takes is really one. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the communication piece, because when it comes to, especially the people's money, the panic sets in. And so the over communication is probably might have helped in the situation. It doesn't always help, but like me, I'm a huge communicator. I'm constantly telling you when you want to meet with me, send me an invite, right? So do it right away. And I'm still working on doing better with that too. Like even when I have my podcast, trying to text the night before, reminding them of it, text the morning of, sometimes you can even schedule text messages. I do that too, but over communicating. And we have this philosophy in the restaurant business is called over deliver, under promise, So if I can give you an expectation of what I'm going to deliver, and then I just go above and beyond that, I've over-delivered for you. And that's even ingrained in the restaurant scene in New Orleans. They have a thing called the Lagniappe, and it's something for nothing. So you get surprised because you got the food you wanted, but now you've got something like a praline cookie or something like that you didn't expect. So I've had an experience in addition where it wasn't a customer, but it was an employee that threw me under the bus. And I was doing a festival, a food truck festival, and so you had to hire temps and, using Craigslist and other mediums like that. And I just needed like about a dozen people to work this event. And a husband and wife came into work and their behavior was not appropriate at all within the first 10 to 15 minutes of them being there. And, I kind of needed everybody because it was the Ostrich Festival. So it was like 100,000 people were coming through. But she came in and was trying to be the boss and telling everybody what to do, but sitting there and just, she was actually, hugging up on her husband and that kind of thing. And so at one point I asked her something to do and she gave me some negative response and I didn't, kowtow to what she did. I basically said, hey, I need you to do this. It's up to you. And then she just walked off the job. Later on Facebook, she blasted my company and she was saying, don't go work for this guy and blah, 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 and stuff like that. So if you'd ask me what I learned from that, I would say make sure that I vet the people that come to work for me, even on a temporary basis, so that I know that they're going to be the right employee to have working for me at the time. And that's the only time that has ever happened in years and years of business. But it can happen.
Yes, it's important to make sure that you vet everybody who works for you, whether it's full-time, part-time, or even contractors, because in the end, any negativity that they bring to the table eventually falls onto the customer and hinders the customer experience. And this leads me to my next question for you. So I listened to your podcast episode of your Xtreme Hospitality podcast. I listened to the episode where you were speaking with restaurateur Russell Ibarra, and y'all both talked about the importance of consistency in service. What do restaurateurs like yourself do to strive to ensure that service is always consistent in terms of being top-notch and 5-star every time, so that way you ensure that every customer receives the exact same hospitality and quality of customer service every single time they come in, or even if it's with new customers? What do you do to strive to ensure that there's always that level of consistency that is 5-star?
Okay, great question. It's also a great challenge that we have in the industry because we depend on labor to accomplish our sales and our sales goals. I would say that, let's say if you're just, starting a restaurant, you definitely want to have a business plan. You want to have an operational plan. You want to have a training and development plan. So these are laid out foundationally from the start, and there's a proper expectation. Not only that, you understand the why of your business, you understand what you represent, so then you can then communicate that to anybody that joins you, and that creates a foundation for consistency. But on a regular day-to-day basis, you want to have proper staffing. Understaffing can lead to inconsistencies. Overstaffing can lead to inconsistencies. So you want to find that sweet spot where you have the right people in the right stations working hand in hand with one another to make sure that customer is being taken care of in a predetermined amount of time. And when I say predetermined, I mean there should always be a number that you're trying to hit. So when the average guest guest comes in. If you're a full service restaurant, you may have a 2-hour turnover seating time. If you're a fast casual, say a restaurant like Jamburritos, you're going to look at what they call throughput. So when the person first gets to the ordering position, how fast do they get to the end of the cashier? Chipotle works on about 2 minutes. They may say shorter, but I've kind of clocked them at around 2 minutes on average. And so the main thing is consistency. I've heard it said that you can be consistently bad and still do well in business, because they know, like, okay, when mom and dad come into town, we can depend on this restaurant. And I don't mean really bad, but you say average or whatever, we're going to go here because we know what to expect, rather than go to another place where we have no idea how they are. Or with this other place is up and down, up and down. We don't know what we're going to get. So consistency in the restaurant business is a great pillar that we need to focus on. Other areas of consistency have to be with consistent measuring tools. So one of the biggest things that I'm learning that people don't like about certain operations is that one day they go in and they get this much meat on their plate, and the next day they have half the amount of meat, or then the following day they have, a little bit more than they got the first time. And so the key here is to have measuring tools that measure out exactly what it is that you're going to be serving. Checks and balances. Our restaurants back in Jersey, we had, when we opened up, the lighting had to be right. The music had to be right. Our uniforms had to be clean. Our bathrooms had to be clean. We had line checks and prep and pre-meals. So a line check would be tasting the food and make sure that it matched all the proper consistencies in color, in taste, in texture. The pre-meals were our time to sit down and talk about what we were serving that day, what we were focusing on. Pep talk. I'm going to be using a lot of technology now to do pep talk. Hey, you're coming on, Christian, to work your shift, and the focus of the day is have fun, something like that. Proper purchasing is important. If you keep buying different cuts of meat for the same meal, then people are going to see that sometimes it's chewy, sometimes it's not chewy, sometimes it's heavy beef flavor, sometimes it's not. Consistency in product is very, very important. So if you notice Cheesecake Factory, you can go to Cheesecake Factory in Arizona and you can go to Cheesecake Factory in Houston and get the same exact dish, the same portion sizes, everything would be consistent across the board. This is where they've really taken over. I'd say in some cases, they've taken a lot of shares from the fine dining atmospheres, because say a Cheesecake Factory is not exactly fine dining, but it is just below that. And it does offer the atmosphere, the full service, the exotic dishes, and so on and so forth. But the consistency is really where they focus heavily on from their corporate kitchens. I also like to emphasize ongoing training and development. So it's not enough to start your staff off and get them all trained up and then let them release them to the public. But consistent, ongoing training and development programs are very, very important to being consistent, because somebody may start off really, really well, but then they become a little jaded, they relax a little bit, and they may even get bored because they're not learning anything new. But now you can find a way to keep them interested in the job and excited about what they're doing with ongoing training and development, refreshing what they already know, and maybe adding something additional to it. I also talked about the mise en place and things like that. I always looked at the restaurant industry as a Broadway play. So before the guests come to see this play, everybody's in the back of a closed curtain, and they're setting up all the props, and they're getting everything just properly lined up, and they're practicing, and they're exercising their vocal cords and different things like that. But when the curtains will go up, stage is open, and it's called showtime. So when you stage the place to prepare for the customer's experience, it touches on every level, and it's definitely part of consistency. So yeah, I would say those are some little tidbits that could help any restaurateur or future restaurateur focus on what people are feeling most important, that is most important to them, and that's consistency in service as well as food.
And that also applies to any type of business. I mean, we're talking about the restaurant industry here, but no matter what business you run, it's always important to make sure that you're consistent in all those areas, because it's not right for one customer to have a 1-star experience and another customer to have a 5-star experience when both of them could have been 5-star experiences. That just depends on how well everybody treats each customer, and how, it depends depends on how consistent everything was. If there is a lack of consistency in certain areas, that will definitely hinder your brand, especially if you have repeat customers who receive great service one day and then they might come back another day and the service or the quality of the food or the product in general was not very good. That can create some jaded customers, because if they got a stellar first impression the first time, then they're going to expect that same exact thing every other time as well. First impressions count, and they do stick for life. I talk about this all the time. So it's always important to make sure that you pull a very strong first impression with any customer you deal with, no matter who they are. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I kind of want to talk a little bit more about customer service related problems that could happen. So let's backtrack a little bit. So every restaurant or business in general faces customer service related problems such as rude staff, slow service, and messed up orders. And that's just a fact of life with any business. You're always going to run into these things somewhere, no matter where you go. Now, to provide Xtreme Hospitality, what can you recommend to other business owners out there to help reduce these problems and ensure that quality service is given to every customer every single time? So we're still talking about consistency, but what do we do to help make sure that we reduce any type of problem that could happen? Any sort of potential one-star experience?
Yeah, good question. And part of that was answered earlier, but I will say that your staff is an extension of who you are as a owner and what values that you have in your company. And if those values are not clearly stated and posted, then you could run into the challenges of where people will act out or not live up to the standards that you've already set. So everything rises and falls with leadership, according to John C. Maxwell, a noted orator and author of leadership. So if you have somebody being rude or you have a situation where service is slow, then maybe you haven't set the bar where it should be to a point where they think it's okay. The hiring process is probably the first and foremost way of mitigating this prior to having it written down in a manual somewhere and having it articulated. So once you've written it down, we are a friendly restaurant. We do not treat our customers rudely. We are here to provide extreme hospitality. And so now that's written, it's in your manuals, it's in your handbooks and so forth. And now you're training to that. And I think most times, if you have a customer that passed the interview process as a potential, contributor to the success of this restaurant, and then may have a bad day, then there's some coaching that will have to go on. You can't get around from some of these negative things that will happen. But the question is, how do you restore that person to the state of which they were when they signed on the dotted line saying, I agree to all of these company policies? And no one is disposable. So you want to do your best to address the situation, let it become a learning opportunity. And so then at that point, you can mitigate these things happening in the future. When you have a team-based environment also, if I'm next to a partner who seems to be about to lose it, hopefully I'm coached to the point where I know how to step in and intervene so nothing gets out of hand. So that's how a team works together. Talked here about messed up orders, and that's also going to happen. But there's a checks and balances that you can have so that orders are not messed up. Like, for example, check and recheck. So let's say I'm doing an online order. It's going to go to the Flocker. Flocker is the food locker in our restaurant. The ticket says I should have this, that. I should have a Jamburrito with hush puppies and a Pepsi waiting for this customer. And you have a process where after it gets put into the bag, it's double checked that it is exactly off. Maybe it could be just a check mark on the side of the bag that says what's in the bag. There's different ways you can do it. The idea is to make sure that you're checked and balanced. You're not just putting it up there once and just forgetting about it. Another way that I find that messed up orders can happen is taking too many orders in at one time. So now they have, for example, online happens to be one of the ways in which this happens easily because you have people waiting in the restaurant for being served, and then you have people online putting their orders in. Well, the thought is that, or it used to be that you couldn't control those online orders, but now they have mechanisms where you can actually delay how fast these orders come in. You can have, different time frames. So let's say at 12 o'clock when you're busiest, you may say the order will be ready in 15 minutes. And then at 1 o'clock where you're not as busy, it could be ready in 10 minutes or what have you. We used to even do that on the food truck. We start off with 10 people on the line. We'd say there'd be 2 to 3 minutes. And then when we get to 20, it would be 3 to 5 minutes, but it's the communication piece that happens, because what happens is if some orders are put out of order, if sometime you take in an order and you make a mistake on it, now you have to go back and remake that order again and hold the line up even further. So the ability to have a systematic way of giving proper expectations as to when the food is going to be ready for the guests, and then also checks and balances before it goes out. Like we used to say, when the person came to pick up their order at the window of the truck, we would say, "Hi, Christian." "Yes, I'm Christian." "Okay, Christian, you ordered a carne asada jamborito with sauce on the side and Cajun chips. Is that correct?" "Yes, it is." There it is. We hand it to Christian. If we're doing a nighttime gig and it's at a concert or something like that, the music is really loud, that makes it even more important to have that check mark with your guests. One of the things I want to do in our restaurant is, you ever been to the airport where when you leave out of the airport bathroom, they have a smiley face and a sad face, and you hit that and they somehow send the information somewhere? I want to have one of those at the exit door of my restaurant, so that if they have a bad experience, they have that immediate chance before they leave the restaurant to let us know about it. That's what I would say would help with some of these things that will happen, because mistakes will happen.
Those are all really good methods of ensuring that everything is taken accounted for immediately. The best way to prevent mistakes from happening is to always just be extremely watchful over what's being done, over the job being performed. So in the kitchen, are the staff making sure that they follow their orders down to a T in terms of ingredients? If somebody ordered something custom, are they noting down that, for example, if they order a sandwich, that this customer asked for no onions? Because even if they overlook it, the customer certainly isn't going to be pleased if they found out that they messed up their order altogether. They're going to bring it back and they're going to ask to get it remade. But sometimes they may not get a chance to come back. Maybe they live too far from the restaurant to drive back, or they're on their lunch break from work and they don't have that time to go back and get it remade. So in the end, you're going to have a pretty upset customer over something trivial like that. And I like the way you describe the systems of checks and balances. That would help ensure that every single little aspect of the ordering process is watched like a hawk. And especially for the people in the back who are making the orders, they are making the orders exactly how they have been placed by the customer. All the customizations. Maybe they asked for a little bit extra sauce, or they asked for you to put extra pickles on their burger, something like that. Those are little things that count. And if the customer is especially paid for these extra add-ons, they're going to especially want to make sure that they've got them. Now, when it comes to, sometimes little things like this can lead to, unfortunately, bad reviews being left. And I wanted to ask you specifically about that. Many business owners will get defensive when a customer leaves a bad review online rather than address the issue with the solution. And we've talked about this earlier. It's important to have a solution and show that you care about the customer should they be upset for whatever reason. Please tell us, how should restaurateurs and business owners in general handle bad reviews without making it sound like that the customer is wrong or that the business owner doesn't want to take accountability?
You hit the nail right on the head there. This is a big issue, actually, and I don't think we're handling it the way we should. And I think there's a great opportunity here for Jamburritos, which is, about to be under construction. That area, we took a poll, so to speak. Well, basically what we did is we looked for burrito and Cajun restaurants within a 3-mile radius, and we found 10 restaurants. Actually, we found 300 reviews. We put it into AI and told AI to tell us what are the top 10 negative things that people are talking about and what are the top 10 positive things that they're talking about. And the average star in that neighborhood was 3 out of 5, which was not good. But service was one of the biggest things that they said were negative, and consistency was second, and cleanliness was third. But what I realized is that out of these 300 reviews, less than 15% of those reviews were even responded to by the owner. And that is a big no-no. So that's the first big no, not responding, because anybody that's looking to come to your place, your restaurant, and they're looking at these reviews and they're saying this restaurateur does not care enough to respond. Even if it happens to be you don't have the bandwidth to respond, the way it comes across is that you don't care. Then you have another way of people, when they will respond, we read reviews where they were making excuses. That's not what the customer wants to hear. And then they had other reviews where it was obviously like a template response. And it just said stuff like, sorry you had a bad experience. Please come back so we can make it better, or contact this number. Not good. Not good. So we have decided that we have a policy that we will have 100% response rate to every review, good, bad, or ugly. And we're going to actually look at it. And this is what I really want us to understand. These reviews are gold mines. They are like money left on the table if you handle them properly. I mean, these are people that are taking the time to reach out and say something. And this is a perfect opportunity to show up strong, not making excuses, giving them a legitimate way to reconcile the situation. I've heard stuff like, oh, we're sorry, we were understaffed that day. It's not their problem. I've had a situation where somebody told me from a major restaurant chain that the reason why the meat was tough was because of their purveyor gave them tough meat. Really? Okay, come on. Why would you even say something like that? I mean, take ownership. I will take care of it. We will pull it from stock, whatever we got to do. But you don't want to keep doing bad after bad. So I would highly recommend that every restaurateur has a policy of a 100% response rate, however they can get it done, and make sure that they understand the proper way of dealing with these issues. It's no different than you would if a person were complaining to you right in front of your face in the restaurant. It's no different. You know, you handle it with emotional intelligence. Giving out some food, which is really only costing you food costs and a little bit of labor, not to minimize that, but it's a lot better than, multiple customers that will not patronize you because you didn't handle the situation right. Now, I would say this. I understand how busy we are, and I do encourage using AI for certain responses. I'm not saying you can't, but let it be personalized. I'm actually looking into some software now that will allow me to read the negative reviews. The software will read the negative reviews and have the appropriate response based on the model that we've set. That's definitely doable. You could give me a fake complaint today. I can put it in Chat GPT. They know what we stand for, and I can have a response to you, Christian Gonzalez, within seconds. So stop looking at negative reviews. Some people are so scared of them. I've heard people say, I don't want to be out there on the internet because they're going to just dog me out. That is free advertising. Take advantage of it. Manage it well, and you will not only reduce the negative reviews, but you will win customers because people want to patronize you. So that would be my take on negative reviews.
I agree that it's very, very important to reply to every review that comes in. I've done that myself personally for the 22 5-star reviews that CDG currently has on Google. I also want to speak about something a little bit technical here. When you apply to a review, it not only makes your business look more caring in the eyes of potential new customers, but it is also an SEO ranking factor too. Google does tend to push businesses higher up on Google Maps that have 5-star reviews, but even more so if you are replying to every single one of your reviews. And it doesn't matter if it's a 5-star or a 1-star, every review deserves a reply because it shows to the customer that you care about them, that you're concerned, and if they have an issue, you're showing that you're willing to address it. But if they don't have an issue and it was a positive 5-star experience, you can just simply tell them, thank you for your business. We appreciate doing business with you, and just show the customer how much that the money that they spent at your business really means to them, that you truly cared about them and appreciate them patronizing your business. Let's be honest here. In a large city like Houston or in any saturated market, there's a lot of competition for nearly every industry. So every customer truly is vital to your overall success. I heard what Mr. Ibarra told you in your podcast episode. He quoted Tillman Fertitta, the owner of Landry, saying that there are no spare customers. That is a very, very, very down-to-earth true statement. There are no spare customers. If you lose customers and you continue to see your customer base because of whatever reason, whether it's any of the negative reasons we discussed in this episode or something completely different, once you lose your customer base, you don't know if they're ever going to come back. And that's a very scary thought. If you continue to deliver anything less than a 5-star, especially if it's a 1 or 2-star experience to your customer, guess what? You're going to go out of business eventually. People are going to quit patronizing you. People are going to read the reviews, and if they see nothing but 1 star, 2 stars here and there, and those tend to dominate out of the 5-star, they're not going to set foot in your restaurant or your business in general. They're going to go to a competitor. So it's always important to make sure that you remain consistent on quality and hospitality if you truly are serious about being successful for years to come. Now, my next question for you is directly related to that. Please tell us, what are some KPIs or key performance indicators to look for that are signs that a business is truly benefiting from offering Xtreme Hospitality?
Yeah, so I've got 3 bullet points for you. Customer advocacy. Customer advocacy is when people market your business for you because they're so satisfied. That's the cheapest marketing out there. Person that comes from your place, they say, you got to go here. You're going to feel good when you go there. You're going to enjoy the food when you go there. And you're going to feel good after you left the place. Customer advocacy. That's a KPI. And how you know it's a KPI is when someone says, how'd you hear about us? Oh, my friend told me. You can know your KPI for customer advocacy is working when the following year, you might have spent 3% of your budget on marketing and you're so busy, you can cut it down to 2.75%. That's what customer advocacy can do for you. Then there's the increase in net profit and the exponential business growth. When you do it that way, your business will grow and your net profits will grow. And it'll grow in a, not necessarily a small rise, so to speak, but it will grow exponentially. And then the final one I want to tell you about is employee satisfaction and increased morale. There's nothing like working on a job that you feel proud every time you finish, that you've done something special, that you have affected people's lives to a degree with the tools that you've been given. There's nothing like that, knowing that you're playing on the championship team and that you stand out above the rest. And the good thing is that if you decide to leave and go to another restaurant or any other job, when I had my restaurants in Jersey, I had 16-year-old boys and girls working for me. Almost every one of them, when I left Jersey, were recruited by or were hired by some of the finer restaurants in town. And I even hear from some of them today, 25 years later, saying how well they're doing and how they're raising a family of 3 and in church every Sunday. It's because they had pride in what they did, and we were giving them a platform from which to launch their skills. We had one kid that he had a beautiful voice like the Boys to Men, and he was the guy that sang happy birthday to all of the guests when they came in, gave him a platform. So the KPIs become really evident, and by looking at the numbers, understanding who's talking about you, and understanding of how it's affecting your team in a positive way.
And every business owner always reviews KPIs regularly, especially if it's quarterly or monthly. And in the end, these help them identify and pinpoint which areas of business they need improvement in. And those are some good ones right there, specifically for the restaurant industry. Word of mouth marketing, you mentioned that as your first bullet point. And word of mouth marketing is the easiest way to really get more customers. It's cheap because it's free, basically. It's a cheap way to get more customers. And it's also almost guaranteed because you have somebody who's acting as a customer advocate, speaking highly about your company and recommending all their friends and family to come do business with you if they need similar services. It's basically a previous customer who was so satisfied that they're just telling the world about you. They're raving about you left and right. And I've been told by business consultants that that is the number one best way to market your business. And you do want to strive to be that business that everybody is telling the world about, because it's the easiest way. It's the easiest way to get more customers because the social proof is already there. And especially if it's a friend telling a friend or family member, then that new referral just feels more validated to come and do business with you because they're getting it from a source that they trust. As we get ready to close out this episode, I would like you to please summarize what Xtreme Hospitality is to our listeners. And then I'm going to share a very brief example as well of some Xtreme Hospitality that I received at a casual restaurant. I won't name drop, but it was at a casual restaurant that I would often frequent.
Let me tell you about living Xtreme Hospitality. So that is the name of my podcast. And I put the word living in front of extreme because it gave the notion that this is our part of our DNA. So we live and breathe Xtreme Hospitality. But it's both a podcast and a restaurant consulting firm. Our goal is to raise the bar of service in the hospitality industry. Our guests on our podcast are industry specialists who share their best practices with restaurateurs and future restaurateurs to assist them in making sure that the guests get the best service possible when patronizing their establishment. Further, more in-depth support can be had through our consulting services. A future goal for the podcast is to identify and interview restaurants who are consistently exemplifying extreme hospitality and have them on the podcast. This podcast would appeal to the consumer who would then find help in finding restaurants with the highest service levels. We envision distributing window emblems and website marquees that symbolize a restaurant's dedication to living extreme hospitality, which would be called LXH. And so the end game is the customer. No matter where they go, whether they come to Jamburritos, whether they go anywhere else, else, that they have an expectation that is not let down, that is met. And so with this type of LXH insignia, you don't have to ferret through the bad places. All you got to do is go to all the ones that are listed on our website as good places. That's what we're looking to do long term. Thank you, Christian.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you for explaining that with us. And as for my final remark, I just want to explain a really quick example of Xtreme Hospitality that I have received personally. So there is a casual restaurant chain, which I'm not going to name drop at this time, but this was a place that I frequented with family quite a bit. And we've been there enough times that this one particular server there already knew exactly what we needed and was always ready to serve us immediately. I mean, on point service. She knew exactly what we needed. Extremely kind, extremely friendly, and, knew me by name personally. And before it was time to leave, she would always have our stuff ready to go for us that we normally took with us, usually some drinks to go. I can honestly say that I've never got service like that anywhere else. The attention to detail, the willingness to serve, the friendliness, always ready to help us and stop by our table when we needed something. The moment we already got our orders placed, she was already ready to take care of us to the next level. This restaurant did involve a serving line, and before we even got out of the serving line, she was already there, ready to take our food to the table and start serving us. We could have sat in any section, but she always made sure in particularly serve us because she already knew who we were. She already knew what we specifically needed. And let me ask you this, Michael, as a bonus closing question. How do you feel about employees who know customers personally and already know their specific needs and already have their A game on them before they even start serving the customer? They already know you, they're ready to serve you, and they're already ready to give you that top-notch, extreme hospitable service.
I think that's great. I think that should be the end game. In any situation, the challenge sometimes happens where they don't have the opportunity to balance that out with the rest of their guests. And so they might look like they're favoring your table over anybody else's table. My training process would be everybody deserves Xtreme Hospitality. And so let's say you start off your shift and you have a section that has 4 tables and you get one table filled up. And so then you're able to give them, all of your attention. The question is, how do you deal with it when you have all 4 tables filled up? So you have to come up with a way of being equitable with that service. I remember we had that situation several times in our Jersey restaurant, and I would teach the guys, okay, you get sat all at one time, 4 tables. What do how do you do that? So I said, well, you stand there and you try to do some of your work, some of your service in a sort of a group setting. So you stand right in front of the middle of the 4 tables. You say, hi, I am James so-and-so. I apologize that we got sat down all at the same time. Can I at least give everyone the specials all at one time? Obviously, the rest of the order taking process is going to have to be individual, but we came up with some unique ways of dealing with those situations that were over pressurized. So basically, the last thing I want to do is sit down at one table and see another table being catered to more than myself. So the key is to balance it out and to make sure that you can give everybody extreme hospitality. Now, from a management's perspective, we had to stop, seating 4 tables at one time, stagger the reservations, different things like that. So we didn't just allow it to happen all the time, but when it did happen, they had a way of dealing with it. I'll tell you one other last story that kind of proves this point. So I'm in the kitchen, I'm cooking, I got my earpiece on to answer phones, and the restaurant is full. I have no more reservations available, and I get a call from a dignitary in town. I think he was like a part of the mayor's office, and he said, hey, we're coming in. We have a party of 10. Can we get a table? And I said, I'm sorry, we're fully booked. And he said, do you know who we are? I said, yes, I do. And I appreciate that, but I cannot bump other people who have made reservations 2 weeks ago. And that could have, negatively affected me somewhere down the line, but it was a standard that I had to stand by. Even further was a time when the local bag lady came in and saved up all her money to eat in the restaurant. This was during a breakfast hour, and everybody was looking at her strangely. And I personally served her because I wanted her to know that she was just as special as anybody else that's in the restaurant. And so people looked at her funny and that kind of thing, but she got my personal service. And she could have gotten, good service from any one of my staff, but I was trying to drive home a point, and that's the hospitality mantra or legacy or whatever it is, but that's how I live out my hospitality in any restaurant that I'm running.
And I feel that both decisions that you made in both cases were extremely professional and extremely noble. There should be no room for favoritism or treating certain customers better than others. I really respect the fact that you knew what you had to do in both of those cases, especially with that mayor. The mayor of that city probably felt like he had a level of importance where he expected to be treated differently than other guests because of his title, but you knew exactly what you had to do and you respected the fact that you were booked out and you already had reservations. I love that. And as for the employee that I shared with in my example, I just want to say that she definitely deserves to be promoted one day. Unfortunately, she has not worked at the restaurant that I'm talking about in many years, but she definitely deserves to have a promotion because of how incredibly customer-centric she was. She happens to be out there listening to this episode, and you know who you are if you are listening. I wish you the best in your current venture, and I hope that you have great success in your career, no matter what you're doing at this time, because wherever she decides to work now, wherever her career path has led her, she definitely deserves to have a high-ranking position because she was just so kind, respectful, and extremely customer-centric. I can honestly say this, that after I went back after she left, service certainly wasn't the same anymore. She really was the only employee there that truly brought her A game and showed true concern for the customer, and not just with us, but with others as well. I mean, just so customer-centric, so focused on exceeding, not just meeting, but exceeding the customer's needs, and it just hasn't been the same since she's left. But even though that Xtreme Hospitality is no longer there, it's just went down to like basic hospitality, I just want to say that she has truly proven to me and everybody else that I've dined with there that she truly did care, that she truly does have a big heart when it comes to serving customers, that being a server just wasn't another job for her. She truly was serious about it and cared. I just can't say that about other restaurants that I've been to and other wait staff that I've dealt with. I just can't. This was like a rarity for me to experience that. But yes, Michael, thank you for sharing all of this wonderful information with us. Listeners, if you want to learn more about what Living Xtreme Hospitality is, I invite you to go check out Michael's podcast. Michael, please share with our listeners, where can they find Living Xtreme Hospitality and what can they expect to learn by listening to your show?
Yes. So the show is geared towards restaurateurs and future restaurateurs at the moment. Eventually, we'll be also creating a segment that's geared towards the customer themselves so they can help find all of these LXH restaurants, Living Xtreme Hospitality restaurants. It's going to be geared towards helping them, decide on going to the best rather than trying to figure it out on their own. But right now, if you go to YouTube and you search for Living Xtreme Hospitality without the E on the front, so with the XTREME, you will see the 6 episodes that we have up there now. We've spoken with human resource people. We've spoken with executive chefs from country clubs, owners like Russell Ybarra of, I think, 27, 28 restaurants now. And we're also looking to see if you know someone who is interested in being on the show that exemplifies extreme hospitality or teaches and trains to that. You can reach me at jamburritos@gmail.com. That's JAMBURRITOS@gmail.com. Thank you, Christian.
And thank you, Michael. Listeners, please go and check out Michael's podcast, subscribe to his channel, and if you are a serious restaurateur, I highly recommend that you listen to the 6 episodes that he has. Now, the number of episodes is going to continue to grow exponentially. You're going to learn a lot from Michael. He is a true authority in the restaurant world, and if you really want to learn about how you can serve your customers better, improve your restaurant's overall operations, and of course, offer that 5-star experience where every single team member has brought their A game and you have customers raving about you, this is the podcast you want to go check out. On YouTube, there's going to be a link to his channel in the description, and we encourage you to go and check it out. Thank you once again for coming on the show, Michael. Thank you for sharing information about Living Xtreme Hospitality. I plan on listening to more episodes of your show as well. I love the first episode that you produced, and I plan on checking out the rest of them over time. Thanks once again for sharing. You have a great rest of your day, Michael, and God bless.
Yes, and God bless everyone on this listening area. And thank you so much, Christian. I appreciate you.